All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday for the third time, everyone. I love playoff basketball. We are live on AMP. If those of you guys that are listening on YouTube or on the podcast feed, don't forget AMP is the very first place that you guys can get these shows throughout the postseason. I was just talking with my friends, our production staff before the show about how much more entertaining basketball games are when there's real stakes and urgency. It's why I've been such a big advocate of shortening the season. I'd love to just see more NBA basketball games that are like that with more of the stars playing. I said to you guys before this game, when we did our preview on Monday, I said my biggest fear for the Lakers was that they had just played this funky stretch of schedule where 4 of their final 5 games were against really bad teams, at least relative to what they would be facing as they head into the postseason, right? And then they had this one very important must-win game against the Clippers, right? But the problem is in that particular game, they were on the back-to-back, third game in 4 nights, traveling home, just played in overtime the night before, and so they kind of mailed that one in. And so they've been playing bad basketball for basically 2 weeks now. And I talk about this a lot on this show, but like playing good basketball is a habit. It's not necessarily a talent, it's a habit. There are talent elements to it, right? Like having the ability to handle the basketball, having the ability to shoot, seeing the floor well and being able to make reads, athletic ability, size, strength, all those different things. They all help. But the actual act of playing good basketball, which means doing all of the little basketball things well, whether that's running the floor consistently in transition both ways, running to try to generate an advantage on offense and to try to minimize an advantage on defense, boxing your man out every single time, good closeouts, understanding the scouting report and what specific players are good at or bad at, and knowing what your job is within a defensive scheme. On offense, protecting the basketball, making pass fakes, taking care of it with the dribble, protecting the ball by putting your body between the ball and the man who's ball pressuring you. There's so many different elements of the game that are habitual, that are not at all related to what your talent level is or what your physical tools are. And the problem with it is if you play bad basketball for 4 or 5 games in a row, you can develop some bad habits, the wrong kinds of habits. For instance, LeBron James. And, here's the thing. I'm going to be pretty critical of LeBron James tonight. He is my all-time favorite player. I credit him for everything that I've gained from the game of basketball. My parents raised me on football and baseball. I would not be where I am. I would not have had my school paid for. I would not have had my college basketball career or even doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for LeBron James. I am not a LeBron hater. But as I try to do with everything on this show, I'm going to tell you guys exactly how I feel about stuff. And that includes pointing out the good and bad from every single player. That's the purpose of this show. This is not a propaganda show. This is a basketball analysis show. And LeBron James has been practicing completely mailing in the defensive end of the floor for 2 weeks. His matchup to start this game was Taurean Prince, who is a lot of like Jaden McDaniels for all of the talk about what he does defensively. And he's had a decent season scoring the basketball. But in my opinion, as a connective piece offensively, I actually think he's a better offensive player than Jaden McDaniels. And consistently throughout his career, he's had a lot of confidence. Like Taurean Prince is a guy who feels very good about himself. He's going to go into a big game thinking that he's going to play well. And LeBron James was flat out conceding open shots to him. And it was funny because that was the same thing he had been doing for 2 weeks before. And that kind of trickles down to the rest of the roster. There's been a lot of talk over the course of the last few days about Anthony Davis and how incredibly frustrated he's been with the overall defensive effort, particularly from his from the perimeter players. And AD has been the one guy I'm so impressed by him, because he's the one guy on this roster that I've seen over the course of this last few weeks that seems frustrated and annoyed with what's happening and is giving the requisite effort. And he was chasing everything down tonight. And he had 1 million offensive rebounds, made countless big plays as an athlete on the court. Of course, one of the greatest defensive players to ever play the game. And for the second time this season, he fouled a three-point shooter unnecessarily at the end of a game, which forced the Lakers to earn this one. But it's funny. I tweeted out right before I got on the air, I tweeted out a little screenshot of the line score from tonight's game. It's kind of like a little line chart that shows the team's points increasing as the game progresses. And you'll see Minnesota's scoring go like this, and then suddenly in the fourth quarter, it goes like that. Because what did I say coming into this game? I expected the Lakers to fall down early, but I expected them to win because they're just a better team. Same exact thing happened in Minnesota a couple Fridays ago. They BS through the first half. They locked in the third quarter. They got a ton of stops. Suddenly, it looked like Minnesota couldn't score. In the fourth quarter, Anthony Davis lit them on fire, and the game was over. But again, basketball is a habit, and this is what concerns me. I was talking with some people earlier today about my predictions that I'm going to be making for this postseason, and I'm saving those for tomorrow. We're going to be having Carson on, and we're going to just kind of go big picture in the NBA playoffs. So we're doing, these series previews that I'll be releasing as the week goes along, but tomorrow we're going to do kind of a big picture preview where I give my predictions for the entire postseason. And I'm going into that show completely on the fence in both conferences. I'm completely on the fence in the Eastern Conference between Boston and Milwaukee. And I'm completely on the fence in the Western Conference between Phoenix, Golden State, and the Lakers. And I said to some of the people on my production staff earlier today that if the Lakers came in and dominated this game, that I'd be picking them to come out of the West. And now I'm not sure that I will. And the main reason why is I'm not sure that they're serious about it. There is a level of commitment to the details that you need in order to win an NBA championship. This same group in 2020, from the start of the season to the end, very rarely would you see a game like that. And if they did, they'd bounce back from that game with 4 or 5 magnificent performances. There is an attitude, a locked-in approach that you need to have. And LeBron's been saying a lot of the right stuff, but he hasn't been doing it. And that's been really concerning to me. But there's 2 elements to it. There's the commitment phase, and then there's the building habits phase. I thought they'd be starting this game in the building habits phase because I thought the commitment would have come before the game. It was not. The commitment wasn't there. And then you can actually see them working through those habits down the stretch of this game. LeBron was much more engaged defensively in the second half, but he still made countless defensive mistakes. There was a play where he helped off a Taurean Prince in the strong side corner, which is one of the biggest no-nos in NBA defense, to leave Taurean Prince wide open for a massive 3 in the middle of the fourth quarter. Late in the fourth quarter, a shot that could have cost them the game. I think he had just hit a 3 to tie it at 95, and he fell asleep and had to do a late closeout to Mike Conley on the right wing. He just happened to miss the shot. That's that gap that he's trying to bridge. Okay, he finally committed there in the second half. That's great. But then you have to build the habits. There in OT, you could see it. Just watch the film. Go back and watch OT. Watch the way LeBron is chasing around Taurean Prince. Watch how he's so much more alert and aware of where he needs to be. And what's concerning to me is they are not a massive favorite against Memphis. I haven't seen the line yet. As a matter of fact, Ryan, if you see the line, text it to me. I'd like to see it. But my guess is it's going to be pretty damn close. If the Lakers are a favorite, they'll be a very slight favorite. And if Memphis is a favorite, they'll be a very slight favorite. That means this series is going to be determined by the tightest of margins. And so if you spot them a 2-0 lead because you're not sharp, that could be the difference in a series like this. It's a big problem. Now, the advantage is, it was funny, I was joking with another one of my friends who's a Laker fan during the game, and he was very down about it throughout the game. And I kept saying, like, no, they're going to come back. They're going to come back. They're the better team. They're going to figure it out. And then finally it got a little ugly there where it seemed like they might not be coming back, but they just locked in so intensely on the defensive end there in that fourth quarter. Just got the line in from Ryan. The Lakers are an underdog, plus 106. Memphis is currently a very slight favorite at minus 124. So again, Memphis is a very slight favorite, You cannot go into that series sloppy. But the advantages, having won this game, and I want to credit a couple of specific adjustments. I talked a lot I want to say it was in the Miami Heat, the play-in preview in the Miami Heat segment. I talked about how the Lakers have some flexibility in their closing group. They start with D'Angelo Russell, right? They go D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron, Anthony Davis. But I talked about how they have some adjustments. Like if one of their guards isn't very locked in, they can go to Dennis Schroeder. You saw that tonight. D'Angelo Russell was atrocious in this game. Plug in Dennis Schroeder. He's ready for that environment. Jared Vanderbilt, stone hands. All game was really struggling to catch and finish around the rim, right? Rui Hachimura was struggling to hit a three, but he hit a couple of big ones. Darvin Ham made the adjustment to go to Rui Hachimura. I like that flexibility. There's a lot of good here. I am a huge believer in what this team is capable of. It's not a coincidence that they've been the second best defense in the NBA post-deadline. That is a byproduct of amazing defensive personnel, especially on the back line. LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Like LeBron, again, I've been super critical of him tonight. No, it's not him being old. I'm sorry. It's not, oh, he's old. Oh, he just doesn't have his legs. It's 100% giving a shit. LeBron is actually has one of the most terrifying closeouts that you'll see in the NBA. And when he closes out to a shooter, dudes panic. They won't even try to shoot. He is more than capable of being not just above average, but a great defensive cog on this team. Jared Vanderbilt and Rui Hachimura, one of the big reasons why Rui's getting those closing minutes, you'd think of it as an offensive-defensive sub. Rui has been a great defensive player for this team. And then Dennis Schroeder, I thought one of the kind of the subplots of this particular game was Laker role players kind of struggling under the intensity of the moment. There's a little touch and go there for Rui for a minute, but he ended up making a big three in OT. But like Austin Reeves had one of the worst games he's had in weeks. D'Angelo Russell had his worst game in a Lakers uniform. Troy Brown Jr. had his worst game in a long time. Wenyen Gabriel played a couple of minutes and it became abundantly clear he wasn't capable of playing in this setting. That's an issue. You're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not some of these guys are capable of playing at this level. So, again, tomorrow we're going to do a deeper dive into a lot of this stuff. We're going to talk who I picked to come out of the West, who I picked to come out of the East, who I picked to win the title. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the lower level contenders in that list, and talk about some of the stakes that are some of the things that are at stake in this particular playoff run with Carson. So I'm not going to go too much longer on this particular game, but it's a good win for the Lakers. A win is a win is a win. But they have 4 days now to tighten some things up defensively, and if they don't, they're going to be in some trouble against Memphis. Really quickly before we get out of here, I wanted to talk a little bit about Heat Hawks. So this was a textbook example of the advantages, the physical advantages on a basketball court and the way that they can lead to skill advantages not mattering as much. So for instance, Miami actually got more stops in this game than Atlanta. If you count missed shots and turnovers as stops, Miami got 63 stops and Atlanta got 60 stops. So Miami actually stopped Atlanta from scoring a ton in this game. But they gave up 22 offensive rebounds. Clint Capella had 8. You know, I'm a huge believer in switching defense. I've talked about this a lot. And I love the way it stagnates teams. And I'm a big believer that the good elements of switching outweigh the bad elements. The bad elements, you give up mismatches, you give up rebounding position, you give up all these different things, right? But you also stagnate the opponent, right? You force them to play isolation ball, and you shut down all of their sets. So there's a lot of advantages there. Here's the problem. You have to have a certain type of personnel to run a switching scheme. Every time you switch Bam Adebayo off of Clint Capella onto a perimeter player to defend, you now have Clint Capella battling against 4 additional players where the tallest player in that group is Jimmy Butler at 6'7". See the point? In order to run a switching scheme, you need aggregate size in the lineup. That's why I wish the Lakers would do more switching. When you got Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, and guards that are 6'4", 6'5", like D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves, Then you have the aggregate size to kind of crash the glass and have success there. But Miami let PJ Tucker go and did not replace him. Not with a real athletic forward. Like, I like Kevin Love. The dude's an NBA champion. He's not fixing that problem. Zeller, not fixing the problem, right? And I was looking at the payroll for the Miami Heat after this. Most of these guys are locked up. Kyle Lowry is going to be making a ton of money next year. Duncan Robinson's going to be making a ton of money next year. Tyler Herro's making a ton of money for a long time, and he's not exactly a needle-moving type of player. I tweeted out just kind of like an exercise to people. I said, hey, here's Miami's payroll. What would you do if you were a GM? And I saw a lot of different things, and I didn't see anything specifically that really made much of a difference in my opinion, except for what I would do, which is make one last effort to go all in around Jimmy and Bam. I'd package Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson, every conceivable draft pick they have, and I'd throw it at Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal, and I'd build around the margins there. But they need to get bigger and more athletic on the perimeter. I was also just generally real impressed with Atlanta's approach. Quinn Snyder's been talking a lot about spacing. And spacing is, a very important part of the game of basketball that doesn't get talked about enough. I'll give you an example. What should have been the game winner by Dennis Schroeder tonight. 95-95, LeBron drives along the baseline. Taurean Prince does a good job of funneling him behind the rim so that LeBron doesn't have an opportunity to shoot. You need to give LeBron a clear outlet, which is Dennis Schroeder in the corner. Spacing principles are about having guys in these specific spots on the floor so that you always have a read to make. And if guys aren't in those spots, or if they're congregated to where they're making themselves easy to guard by standing too close to each other, then you run into problems. Atlanta has gotten really good at positioning themselves in the floor where Clint Capella is under the rim as that vertical spacing lob threat, right? And then they have like Sadiq Bey in one corner or DeAndre Hunter in the other corner, and whichever guard doesn't have the ball on the opposite wing. And so when DeJounte Murray beats somebody off the dribble, it's very straightforward. If you see two defenders on you, and you see Clint guarded, and you see the weak side corner guarded, and you see the wing guarded, you know the opposite corner's wide open. You don't even have to look. You can just hook it over there as long as your spacing principles are lined up. And Quinn Snyder's done a really nice job of turning this into a legit drive and kick team. Just in general, I was really impressed with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray embracing their roles as advantage creators and not just hunting their own shots, which got them into a really good groove playing drive and kick basketball, and the Heat were in a blender all night long. It's not like they're about to go beat Boston, and I still think that their best bet is to build around their best trait, which is length and athleticism and size, by flipping Trae Young this summer for some type of wing athlete, a really good scoring wing, since you've already got DeJounte Murray as more of a traditional scoring guard, and go in on what you're great at, which is being big. And I think the Hawks are pretty much done with the Trae Young experience. They're heading into a postseason run, and they leaked to the press that the GM has the approval of the owner to trade Trae Young. That seems like a little bit of a concern to me. But, I mean, to Trae Young's credit, he's handled it like a professional, and he played a great game tonight. And it was a win for the Atlanta Hawks. The Heat are in a lot of trouble because whether it's Toronto or Chicago, if they play a similar brand of basketball, they could be in some big trouble. I expect Toronto to beat Chicago. If they do, same rebounding problem. They are just as likely to go into Miami and get 15, 16 offensive rebounds as Atlanta was. And it could be a problem for them. All right, like I said, we're going to do Lakers fans. I'm going to be talking a lot more about that Lakers-Wolves game when we do our series preview for Lakers-Memphis. And then we're going to be doing big picture predictions with Carson tomorrow morning. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.